one of my favorite choices, you guys, because it happens to be a Corvette. You guys always know I've been a GM guy for years, made my living really with Corvettes for many years, even back in the early 70s. And a 1966 Corvette happens to be one of my favorite year cars. I've had this in my collection for many years, and we get a lot of cards and a lot of letters because this is the opener car to the TV show, the Car Guy channel. And it kind of gets around. I don't take it to too many shows too much. And actually, this car might be switching hands pretty soon, so I thought I'd at least get it on the Car Guy channel and at least talk a little bit about it. The color of this car here is 1966 Sunfire Yellow. It's one of my favorite colors in these cars. It's easy to maintain, easy to keep up, and it always looks good. This car is very sterile because all the bumpers and stuff are on this car. Nothing's been modified or changed around on it. In 1966, they had all sorts of things to offer for Corvette. 1966 was the very first year of the 427 coming into the huge big blocks. 1965, they had the 396 car. 396 car is very, very collectible and very desirable. But when it came 1966, that's when the 427 was introduced. They had a little bit of a different hood than this. This car happens to be a 350 horsepower car with a 4-speed. And the options on the cars are very low on some of the Corvettes, but they have a lot of little tiny things that really make a lot of difference. This model here happens to have the KO wheels, happen to be knockoff wheels. These knockoffs have a little arrow on them. You hit it with a hammer, you spin them off. These are the real deal, which is really kind of cool. 1966 had a gold line actually on the tires from the factory. And between you and me, guys, they weren't any good, but they sure looked pretty cool. But they just didn't really hold up very well because they were a polyglass tire at that time. And you get a motor like in this car here. This happens to be a custom-built Chevy 327 with Mondello angle port heads. It just shifts and drives like butter. It's probably one of the best driving 66 Corvettes I have ever owned. And I actually can say I've owned a really, really large share of them. I feel I know the product pretty well, and it's probably one of the best driving automobiles out there. But they did have a lot of engine options to go. They had a 300 horsepower. They had the Power Glides, they had the 330 horsepowers, 350 horsepowers. Of course, you get into the bigger stuff, the 350 horsepower for the smaller block cars, and then when you get into the 390 horses and the 4.25 horse was the 427 they introduced for 1966. But they had all sorts of neat things and neat features because they were the sports car of America at the time. Thunderbird pretty much did the Tri-5 birds, you know, the 55, 56, 57 T-Bird, and that kind of was the two-seater passenger car, sports car. Chevrolet is the car that really catered and carried on to what we call the official American sports car. There hasn't been one out there. If you guys know of one, you send it to the Car Guy channel. I want to know about it because anybody I know, they always see a Corvette that is the sports car. They never changed to a 4-seater. They never changed anything else, but they did consider it in 1963. There's less than probably 550 Corvettes in 1963 that were produced with the split window coupe. Behind the back seat of the car, you're going to see a little bit of a tub, enough tub that actually feet could be designed to go back in there. That tub was redesigned by A.O. Smith Body Company to rechange the design of that car so we could actually have seats in the back. Chevrolet decided the rear leaf spring could not really hold the actual weight of having 4 adults in the back of the car, like a Mercedes SL is called jump seats. But when they had the 63 Corvette, really thought about it and they highly considered it because Thunderbird was going to it. Finally, someone at GM probably cracked some pretty good heads and wised up and said, this is a sports car and that's not going to happen. Corvette went ahead and changed it with A.O. Smith on the bottom of the cars, changed it all the way around. So all Corvettes have always became 2-seater sports cars. They do automatics, they do power steering, they do power brakes, power windows, they had air conditioning and a lot of things. 1965 was the last year of fuel injection for Corvette. That was a 375 horse motor. When 66 came along, they did away with fuel injection. It really wasn't perfected yet because it was mechanical fuel injection made by Rochester. They changed it to a shoebox style on the top of the air cleaner. But when 66 came along, they came out and they decided to be a really better driving car. Second year of disc brakes was installed. Disc brakes, guys and gals, we all know disc brake safety always comes first, especially when I build them or on my show, the type of cars we're doing. 66, the brakes were perfected. For 1966, the cars were smoother, they stopped better, and just one heck of an automobile. I always say if you ever have the means and you ever get a chance in your life to either buy one or own one, get a chance to at least drive one. You can usually tell what a good one drives like for what one doesn't drive like. When you drive something like this, you know it immediately. No rattles and things like that. But a Roadster. Now, Roadster, they made 27,000 automobiles for Corvette, and happened to be 17,000 of them were Roadsters, and the rest of them were coupes. Coupes have some sort of collectability, and it depends to the right guy. But it's being a sports car, let's face it, the Roadster, the convertible is really where it's at. And this car here shows all the signs of it. 66 was the year they go ahead and put the emblem right on the front of the hood. They didn't have any dishes and no blops in the bottom of the hood. A nice clean line. They changed the lines of it. They still had power automatic headlights. These were all done by an electrical motor. A lot of cars did have hideaway headlights. So did Cougars, Chargers, all sorts of different models and makes of cars. But for the Chevrolet line, they kept it right here. Buick Riviera had, the hideaway vacuum powered headlights. Corvette kept it in the body of the car. It kept all the lines all the way around. That's what like the Europeans did on the early model Ferraris and Nissan Grifos and other models of cars that a little more higher tech back then. But Corvette always stayed on the scene of the sports car look. There's not too many cars back in the 60s that General Motors built that held their resale as strong as a Corvette. A Corvette is like money in the bank all the time. If you guys have one sitting in your garage, sitting one in the barn, I'm telling you right now, it's done better than any stock in the economy we got going today. A lot of General Motors cars has, but nothing has really held much as a standard Corvette. Your Mustangs are doing well, your Shelby's has its own league, but I'll tell you one thing, you didn't have to have Shelby take a Corvette and change it around. No offense to Carroll Shelby, he's a good friend, he's great people. But I'm telling you right now, Corvette is its own deal, and not too many guys have been able to really tweak it and make it much better than it really was from the factory. But I just love the lines of the mid-years. Mid-years between 1963 and 1967, they're really my personal favorite of all the Corvette lines. I'm a pretty good-sized guy. I feel more comfortable in this car. You can see the seats all the way back. Steering wheel's right there. I know we had the 57 Corvette on the show not too long ago. God, I feel like Miguel and Gorilla driving that car because the steering wheel's so close to me. But out of the Corvettes out of my collection, this happens to be my ultra favorite because it drives so well. And that's why we see at the beginning of the show. By the way, there was no trick photography at that particular opening. That car just took off like a rocket ship. It headed out. Well, look at the lines on these. They go straight all the way back, and I'm telling you, it is just one spectacular looking car. If you guys notice, this car here is pointed on the front and pointed on the rear. When Corvette decided to make its changes with the design of the whole complete concept of Corvette, Corvette it's actually built in its own separate factory, and the car bodies were built by an outside source at its time. And 3 taillights were never ever involved on a Corvette. Now some people have put a third one in and some people thought that's the way they were. Corvette has never done that. Even from the year 1962 is when they started doing these type of lights. 62 and 61 are pointed back end, and there's two headlights actually in the front of the car. Looks like the old school in the front and the new school in the rear. Happened in 1961 and 62. When 63 came out, like they said, they changed the whole body style to look a lot like these. They're kind of hard to tell the difference if you're in the business and know much about them. But if you look to the side of the car, Estelle's going to get that camera down there, and you see the 3 slashes on the side of the car. If you look back at any early model Ferraris, the Ferrari GTO, and some of the early model cars, you're going to see how the 3 slashes came in. Until 1967, they put the Mako Shark look. The Mako Shark look was really from a concept car that was actually in an auto show in Detroit back in 1965. And they decided to incorporate that because they figure that's the last year of the mid-year body style, and they had to make some changes. But when Corvette went ahead and kept these cars, these lines all sharp, you look straight down the line of the car. When these things here go straight, they're straight. And the way the bumpers curve on the car, the exhaust still comes out of the body of the car. I'm going to lay down for that. I think that's just fantastic. When the exhaust comes out the back of the car through the body, that's what Europeans did. A lot of cars in the early 50s did that. And it started to dwindle as the years went on. And then, of course, 68, they kind of put them kind of in the half-moon portion, the same spot again, back by the rear bumpers. And they just didn't come out the back end like this. It's just very difficult to do it for the muffler guys out there. When you're ordering all the parts and things to make that happen, it just sweetens the car up and really makes it just totally authentic, and that's just the way it is. Well, Corvette had its gas installed. Now, some people really thought it was extremely cool. Some people thought it was a little bit hard to work with. These gas caps open up from the back of the car, so you're going to take the nozzle and put it to the back. That thing has a pretty big opening back here, large as this gas cap here is, and to put gas in the car made it a little bit difficult. You'll see some older Corvettes, some original stuff, with some drops and things like that from people trying to get gas over into the car. But again, that's what the race car world was all about. That's what they've done. A few cars that actually had this from the factory. Chevrolet Corvette happens to be one of the only ones out there, except for you get a car that was a Challenger or a Cuda. They had them on this side right here of the car. Jaguar actually had them on top of the fenders, on the rear fenders of the car. They had dual pontoon tanks, but Corvette had the one in the center. Dodge put it over there onto the side because they knew of the gas runoff. Corvette kept this design in the center of their car all the way up until the 90s. They always had it in the center of the back of the car. They brought them back a little bit for the installed gas, but this is synonymous to this particular breed in your car. 63 was the very first year they decided to use the rear gas tank installation toward the back of the car. Then they carried that all the way on. I think it's just a great piece and a just iconic part of the American sports car being Corvette, and that's how they did it on the car. They put the emblems. They weren't really too gaudy with emblems in these years. A lot of chrome was taken off. If you remember the earlier cars, they had chrome over the coves. They had the 3 little slashes on the side. 58 had the louvers on the hood, and the deck lids on 58 only was that car. But that was the year of being gaudy and the year of a lot of chrome. If you notice, this car here does not have a lot of chrome. And anything that operates on this car, well, obviously the door's open, it's part of the body, but things that operate in this car, like the back of the rear deck lid and whatnot, it all flows into the body of the car. And when you open up the back deck lid to these cars, you just go ahead and flick a little button, and that opens up right there, and that's how the convertible top opens. And it's actually part of the car. Not too many cars really did that. If you remember, the Thunderbird never really had anything like that whatsoever. You actually had to move the seats forward to pull the top out. Corvette did that in all their breeds of cars up until the year 1956. They actually had a rear deck lid that opened up like this for the convertible top to come out. In 1953, 4, and 5 was the first year of the V8s for the Corvettes, but when they went ahead and made that particular change, that's when tops were hidden in there. It's a lot of body work to do on them, and to get these cars square and straight is a lot to it. When they decided to hide the convertible top back in the well here, these tops are so easy to pull up. Now, in the earlier years, 1956, 57, and 58, they actually had a power top. The power top was virtually, how do I say this nicely, very unfunctional and really didn't work very well. And not too many people really ever used them. So these breeds don't really need them. You pick them up in the center, and pretty much a child can lift these tops up and replace them. They had a couple different types of top options. This top happens to be a canvas style top. This is an upgrade from the standard regular vinyl top that they actually had on Corvette. We like these because they look a little bit better. 66 did a lot of changes to the car as far as interior, as far as the way the seats are done, the way the door panels, and Corvette still had these little tiny knobs right here to go ahead and open up the doors to pull in and out of the car. Just some pretty neat stuff. The dash, of course, you know they all call this, what's the nickname of that, guys and gals? A chicken handle here. And of course, in a car like this, you kind of need one. I'll tell you that right now. You kind of need one. And the way the dash is done, it's just so sports car, so early 60s and very, very Corvette. And all the gauges in a Corvette are very large. And when you get to the gauges by the steering wheel, the gauges are so huge in this car, anybody can see them a mile away. If you remember, we did a clip on one of our shows, and we took one of the 67 Corvettes out on a little bit of road, and we went ahead and brought the car up to, I think, 110 miles an hour. We got a couple clips of that. The gauges were easy to see, even from the camera in the passenger seat. So Estelle was strapped in. I'm telling you guys and gals, her hair was standing on end, and it was fun. You guys will see this car has power steering, and this car's got the 4-speed, it's got the high-performance motor, and I'm telling you, it's a fantastic car to drive. And you're going to see the wood wheel in this car. This was a simulated wood wheel. They actually had a teak wheel, and then they had the simulated plastic wheel. Then they had the standard black Corvette wheel. All three of them are fine. All three of them are collectible. All three of them are good. Any steering wheel for a Corvette is excellent. So when you guys go ahead and see one of these one day, just appreciate and give a thumbs up. I'm going to tell you, out of all the cars we get into Car Guide channel for Car of the Week, I enjoy these a lot. So hope you guys enjoyed this car much as I did, and check it out.